So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We've got to start with the Liberals' failure to secure their safe seat in Toronto, St. Paul. And well, I mean, here's Chrystia Freeling telling you what she thinks of Toronto, St. Paul this morning. Here we go.
That is Leslie's vision. That's the Liberal vision. That's why I'm really calling on the people of St. Paul's to go out there and vote for her, because the alternative is really cold and cruel and small. The alternative is cuts and austerity, not believing in ourselves as a country, not believing in our communities and in our neighbors. That is...
And people overwhelmingly voted for cold, cruel, and small. Yes, please. Absolutely. But anti-taxer takes umbrage with Chrystia Freeland saying, go vote for Leslie because she's really great and the alternative is evil. And he says Election Act violation. Sorry, CPC, you'll be called out also, but this one's for the Liberals. And it says the blackout period, no person shall transmit election advertising to the public in an electoral district on polling day before the close of all the polling stations in the electoral district, which it appears that Chrystia Freeland did yesterday. I was actually shocked to see that footage from yesterday. I thought this has got to be from like the 23rd or not on polling day. Nope. That's what she said on election day. Pretty wild. But election advertising means the transmission to the public by any means during an election period of an advertising message that promotes or opposes a registered party or the election of a candidate. So, I mean, it's not an advertising message, but what Chrystia Freeland was saying about cold, small, all of that stuff, cruel, that could be advertising rhetoric, right? Like you could put that on an ad, right? I'm Chrystia Freeland and I approve this message, right? So, and she cackles because it's kind of witchy. But that seems like a violation to me. Will Elections Canada act, right? The Honourable Sheila Copps says the blackout period applies to paid advertising, not pressers. Caliber says it's illegal to use the public office to campaign. This event was organized by the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of International Trade and taxpayer funded. Campaigning for a by-election candidate at such an event is illegal. And I think that he's correct. So it's very, very interesting. They're setting up pressers on election day, purposely talking about the election, the candidate, the party, disparaging the opposition. Pretty wild stuff. Did you see this ballot? So is that election interference? It seems election interference-y to me, right? Here's Lisa, and she says, this ballot is insane. This is the Toronto St. Paul ballot. Okay, so this is the first page of the ballot, and it's got, 9 independents, and then the Rhinoceros Party, and then another independent, and then the Liberal candidate, and then 2 more independents and the Green candidate, and then a whole bunch more independent and no affiliation candidates. There were something like 80 people on the ballot. And then the second page is all independent, and then the Marijuana Party, and then independent, and then centrist, and then independent and the NDP and independent. And then there's a third page that's got independent, conservative, independent, Marxist, independent, People's Party of Canada, independent. So that's absolutely wild. Is that election interference? How much does it cost to register an independent candidate? If you were somebody who wanted to disrupt this election, could registering a whole whack load of candidates confuse some people, right? Like, I don't know which one I'm supposed to choose. I don't know, right? I'll just choose the Liberal. Maybe it's certainly plausible and seems very election interference-y to me, if you ask me. And here's Stephen Taylor, and he says, question for the Canadian Press Wire Service. Is there anyone else running in the St. Paul by-election, or are you just going to promote the Liberal candidate in your headline photo for every news website in the country? That's exactly what they're doing, right? Here's the stream of the Canadian Press feeding all sorts of different newspapers, and they're running with the Liberals and the Leslie Church as looks like a winner, right? It says voters head to polls for Toronto by-election, and Canadian Press is pushing Liberal as the photo for that. So is that election interference? Is that just a mistake? I don't think it's a mistake. So a 7 o'clock After the polls closed yesterday, 7 p.m., Elections Canada says, I don't know if the polls closed at 7. They just sent this at 7. They may have closed later. I think maybe they closed at 8. Anyway, Elections Canada says results for the Toronto-St. Paul by-election may take a bit longer than usual to come in, as the unusual size of the ballot may slow down the counting process. We still expect results to be available tonight. And gov.exe at 9:19 says, the polls closed at the St. Paul by-election almost an hour ago, and they still have not posted any numbers. I wonder how many Liberal staffers are counting these ballots. ... Right? 0, 0, 0. Amazing. Zoltan caught the Liberals celebrating before all the stations could report in, and so they walk in to cheers. Here we go. We'll watch that. So they're celebrating at that point in the night, and this is I saw this at 5:33 a.m., but 9:30 or whatever, it was like 45% reporting, and it looked like Liberals were ahead of the Conservatives by about 10 points, like it was 36 to 45%, and I thought, oof, that's not so good. That's like hearing the Oilers score at 9:30 last night too. I was like 2-1. Oh man, how much time left? 5 minutes. Oh yikes. So Chris says, congratulations, Dawn. This morning, Conservatives win. Longtime Liberal stronghold Toronto St. Paul's in shock by-election result. That was 2 a.m. posted this morning on CBC Politics. The message is clear, says Chris. Canadians want a new Conservative government that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime, right? So he's using is this guy an MP? He might be an MP. Yeah, he's an MP, so he's a Conservative MP. So that's why he's using all those fancy hashtags and things like that, right? And let's bring it home, he says. So all of that branding is on purpose. That's all electoral rhetoric. I think it's interesting that, the Conservatives won. That's an interesting thing, right? Paul says, breaking, Liberals lose their safe seat of Toronto. St. Paul's to the Conservatives candidate Don Stewart. After counting the ballots until past 4:30 a.m. Toronto time, the Liberals' early lead eroded away, and in the final 10% of polls counted, the Conservatives won the race. This is a big upset victory for the Conservatives and demonstrates that even the safest Liberal seat could now be doomed under Justin Trudeau's tainted Liberal regime. There will no doubt be renewed pressure from the Liberals' backroom power players to force out Trudeau, but will he go quietly, or will Trudeau stick around and implode the Liberal Party as they so richly deserve? Game on. Kathleen Wynne did, and they still haven't recovered in Ontario. And Bonnie Crombie is trying to breathe new life in, but replacing Kathleen Wynne with a carbon copy of Kathleen Wynne in Bonnie Crombie, that's not going to breathe new life into the Liberal Party. If the Liberals started talking about actually holding people accountable for COVID and making energy affordable and things like that, then people would start listening to them. But they're talking about nonsense. They're talking about gender ideology and grooming children and nonsense, absolute nonsense. Transit. Honestly, I don't want transit. I want to mothball transit. I think transit's a waste of money. Get a car. Because fundamentally, have you tried to take a child to like a hockey practice or baseball practice on transit? It doesn't work. Like you have to take a cab. Like there's absolutely no way around it. Doing any kind of familial activity on transit is not going to work unless you're maybe going to a doctor's appointment. But even if you are going to a doctor's appointment, if you get on the bus, say your doctor's appointment is at 10 o'clock in the morning, you have to leave before 9 o'clock to get on the bus by 9 o'clock to be at your appointment for a reasonable time. Whereas if you had a car, you'd be able to leave 9:35, right, to get to your 10 o'clock appointment, get there around the same time as you would with the bus, right? So what's a 5-minute drive, 10-minute drive would probably take you 40 minutes on a bus. In Guelph it would anyway. And so like funding transit, you guys, that's your plan? We'll fund transit while we shut down your economy and force you into 15-minute cities? Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm just not interested in hearing about how my future is going to be a post-apocalyptic hellscape. Thanks. Like, no, Absolutely not, right? So yeah, here's the official by-election results. 42.1% to Liberals, 40.5%. Don Stewart wins. It's interesting. It's super interesting. Ryan says Trudeau actually believes if Leslie wins, he will win. This guy's out of control. So this is 11:56 p.m. This is before the winner was announced. And Global News was reporting on June 20th, Toronto by-election mirrors choice for voters in the next federal vote. Justin Trudeau. So Justin Trudeau takes this by-election that formerly was a very safe Liberal seat, 30-year Liberal seat. And he says, whoever voters choose in this next election is going to be it. I wonder how he's going to reimagine this. If he's even going to mention it, probably not. Here is, Brittany highlighted this yesterday, and Liberal Party is going absolutely full throttle on abortion all day yesterday. It's crazy. 4 posts at least, and all sorts of ministers and everybody else posting as well about abortion and the dangers the Conservatives pose to women's choice, which again, the whole framing of abortions being some kind of benign women's choice and empowering to women. It's not. It's ridiculous. It is an absolute... Our society is very sick. Anyway, the Liberals say Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives want to ban abortion. And there's a meme. It says, is it possible for us to completely ban abortion, or is that just crazy to even think about? And the lawyer guy who needs a shave says anything is possible. I didn't think overturning Roe v. Wade in the United States was possible, and here we are today. I honestly didn't think that was possible either, and I was shocked when it happened, and good news for them. So we could fix it in Canada. We could fix the 1988 Morgan Teller decision. And somebody was saying, they cited Warren Kinsella, and Kinsella was saying the Supreme Court already decided blah, 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 blah. The Supreme Court, in a really, if you read the Morgan Teller decision, it is convoluted. They say that the right of the woman to pursue their self-actualization supersedes anything else, and the baby doesn't, the fetus doesn't get considerations because it's not human yet, because it's a fetus. And they say that the Parliament, after they struck it down, the Parliament is tasked with replacing those protections in a way that actualizes the woman and protects her under Section 7 of the Charter. And so that never happened. That became politically toxic. Nobody brought it up again. So that was 92, and then the political earthquake in Canada, the Kim Campbell incident, the collapse of the Conservative Party, all of that kind of stuff happened. And then the rhetoric changed and nobody wanted to talk about it. And abortion was de facto legal in Canada because of that. And people say it's settled, but it's not really, because the government was supposed to debate and legislate, but they didn't. Anyway, here's another one from the Liberal Party. They said, share if you're proudly pro-choice. And Chris says, no, you're not. Vaccines come to mind. So they're definitely not pro-choice. These people are pro-killing babies. They're not pro-choice. Your body is my property, they say. And if you've got a baby in it, we want to kill it. And if you don't, we want to kill you. So interesting, right? Here is Melanie Joly, and she's responding to Patty Haydu, and they're both on the abortion train. The 2-year anniversary of Roe v. Wade being overturned in the U.S., Roe v. Wade documentary reveals how conservatives are working with the anti-choice movement on a 5-step plan to ban abortions in Canada. Melanie Joly says the protection of choice will always be our top priority. As Poilievre's conservatives threaten to take away the right for women to choose, we continue to fight for them. And Anti-Taxer says, the heat wave is over because the abortion talking point has gone out, right? So they lost a by-election, the heat wave's done, everything that they use as wedge issues, all the talking points that are their go-to spots have been usurped or just kind of collapsed. And so the Liberals really have nothing. It's very, very... it's fun's not the right word. I'd really like accountability, actually. I'd really like for them to be held accountable for the damage they've done economically in this country and be held accountable for the lies they told, safe and effective and all the rest of it. Why are you buying 10 shots for medication that's not tested on people? All right, let's talk about Julian Assange. We were going to start with Julian Assange, but then I got the tabs mixed up and we started with the by-elections instead, which I think was a strong choice. Okay, here is Julian Assange, and Gunther Eagleman says, listen to these words spoken by Julian Assange. Quote, the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal of Afghanistan is to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States. The goal is to have endless war, not a successful war. Now look at Ukraine. In February 22, Russia invaded Ukraine. By April, there was tentative talks of peace. Why did the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, speak to end the talks and the peace talks? Simple, they didn't want the war to end. Since then, America and other NATO allies have steadily drug their feet in an obvious manner with aid package after aid package. To date, America has spent approximately $175 trillion. That's more, or is that billion dollars in aid to Ukraine. That's 90 billion with a B. To what end? When do the peace talks resume? When do people understand that Ukraine and Afghanistan have all the same underlying values? So pretty interesting. Dom Lucre says, WikiLeaks founder and the man who led to Hillary Clinton's emails being exposed, Julian Assange, has just reached a plea deal with the United States Justice Department, or U.S. Department of Justice, allowing him to be released from prison. He is expected to return to Australia. Assange has been incarcerated in Belmarsh since 2019 after spending 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy. He is coming back right on time for the election. ... So, I mean, weird, right? Very, very interesting, because in 2020, so, I mean, if you were paying attention to Q, and I did pay attention to Q, but I don't think there was anybody who wasn't really paying attention to Q if you were interested in politics, because that was the thing that was happening and it was making everybody lose their minds. So if you were watching, right? And so one of the interesting things was that I thought that Julian Assange was going to be a part of the big reveal, because I thought he's in the know, right? Like he's in the know. He's got information that nobody else on earth would have, right? Regardless of classified or not. And so I thought that he was part of some kind of reveal plan. And I just, batting ideas around in my head, I figured that I thought the timeline was 2020, not 2025, 2024, and then beyond 24, right? So I thought, man, if Assange is part of this, they really have to move to get him out of where he is currently, because it looks like he's not moving at all, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of movement at all. And I thought, like, time's running out. And now the fact that he's moving now, it's about right for November for him to be a player. So, or to be eliminated. Maybe both are equally plausible. Who knows? But he's free now. So what does that mean? I don't know. But it certainly seems interesting to me. Colin says, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange boards a jet at London's Stansted Airport. I'm getting that wrong. And being freed from prison. Assange spent 1,901 days at the Belmarsh maximum security prison. Immediately after being released from prison, Assange departed the United Kingdom. Quote, he was granted bail by the High Court in London and was released at Stansted Airport during the afternoon, where he boarded a plane and departed the UK, WikiLeaks posted on X. So that's interesting. David says, this is why they fought so hard to bring down Julian Assange. He says, the CIA created ISIS, says Julian Assange, as WikiLeaks released 500,000 plus US cables. And cables are just communications between diplomatic people, etc., etc. So that's interesting, right? And WikiLeaks posted here, Julian Assange is free. He left Belmarsh maximum security prison on the morning of 24th of June after having spent 1,901 days there. He was granted bail by the High Court in London and was released at Stansted Airport during the afternoon, where he boarded a plane and departed the United Kingdom. Now, this court in London, the High Court in London, is not a United Kingdom court. It's a different court. And somebody was bringing attention to this, and they were saying, like, we should be paying attention, because it seems like there's more going on here. This is not, oh, thank goodness there's movement. Like, this is like a choreographed dance, right? We seem to be watching, lightsaber dance, or lightsaber dances, a kata, right? Like a lightsaber fight is a kata, right? It's a sword kata. And a kata is just a bunch of martial art moves put together in kind of a dance kind of thing to display your skills. And that seems like what we're watching right now. We're watching a well-orchestrated kata about this fight. It seems like an opera. It's an opera. We're watching an opera. It's like a space opera with laser swords, right? It's weird. It's a very big, the interplay is really, really interesting to watch, because these guys, the High Court in London, didn't want to let Assange out. They wanted him to die in prison. They wanted him to be removed as a player. Hillary Clinton famously said, why can't we just drone the guy? Right? Like, they want him removed, and he's not. Now he's a player again, right? He's been a player the whole time, but now he's on the board again. So somebody got the pawn to the other side, and they just brought Julian Assange out of prison. Somebody jailbroke in dodgeball, and Julian's back, right? So like, the whole thing is very interesting to watch. And I'm interested to see what happens next. But I'm always interested to see what happens next. It's like, oh, really? Here's COVID. Here's some just COVID news. Peter Sweden says 5 states will be suing Pfizer for lying about their COVID injections. So I reported yesterday that Kansas, the Attorney General in Kansas would, but apparently there's more now. So I just thought I'd update. Earlier, Peter Sweden says, I reported on how Attorney General in Kansas is suing Pfizer for misleading people. I almost said misgendering. I really did. For misleading people about the safety and efficacy of the COVID injection. It turns out that 5 U.S. states, including Kansas, will be suing Pfizer. This is huge news. He came with some shocking revelations that over 10% of women who got the injection suffered a miscarriage. I suspected this was the case many years ago, because I started to notice something weird with the birth rate statistics. After 9 months after the COVID injections were rolled out, we saw a massive collapse in birth rates. Not only that, but we saw that women who did not get the COVID injection were overrepresented in giving birth. This made me think, and it says, turns out that the study showed that liquid nanoparticles in the mRNA injections went everywhere in rats with a high concentration in the ovaries. The study showed that the injection was likely linked to infertility. So that's, not great. Not great, especially when you consider Helen Gress's trial and her looking into infants dying after their mothers had been jabbed with Pfizer, et cetera, or jabbed with the mRNA vaccines. All of that is, again, interesting and very difficult to, after having lived through it, being able to say this was definitely happening at that time, and you people probably knew it. It's crazy. Like, it makes what we lived through even more crazy. Does that make sense? It's so unbelievable that it happened, right? And that there were so many people, elected officials who still sneer anti-vaxxer. Like, Justin Trudeau is still the prime minister. Why isn't he in prison? Like, he locked down the economy. He destroyed a lot of economic activity in this country, et cetera, for a lie. And he damn well knew it was a lie. How is he free? Because he's part of the plan, right? Anyway, Wide Awake Media says, would you be happy sharing and not owning a car? This is the WEF's idea. And it says, the World Economic Forum, the Netherlands is building a neighborhood where every car must be shared. There will be 1 vehicle for every 3 homes and no space for privately owned cars. So if you're going to hockey, you better hope that nobody else has hockey at the same time. Residents will be encouraged to cycle, use public transport, or borrow from a pool of shared cars, and everything that residents need will be within walking distance. Oh yeah, need by who? I remember when, during COVID, the liars and criminals like Doug Ford tried to tell me that children's shoes weren't a necessity, and they closed down the aisles for no good reason to stop the spread of COVID. Bullshit. Who comes up with what I need? Who decides what I need within walking distance? Because it's not the World Economic Forum. They're not going to know what I need. Anyway, back to this. But remember, the idea that unelected globalists have an agenda to ban private car ownership and confine everybody to their neighborhoods is just a conspiracy theory. So yeah, pretty wild stuff. I don't want to play the World Economic Forum video because F them. Charlotte says Charlotte is responding to Keir Starmer. We have some other UK news at the end of the show, Nigel Farage news, but she says a sensible government would reduce demand for services, first of all, cap and reduce immigration. Then it would scrap policies squeezing people's income, ULEZ, LTNs, woke waste. Then it would have a think about spending more. Keir Starmer says at this election, access to the National Health Service dentistry is on the line. Labour's dentistry rescue plan will provide 700,000 extra dentistry appointments straight away and start building the NHS dentistry for the future. Where have we heard that plan before? Oh, the NDP just rolled that out in Canada? pretty wild. So Justin Trudeau and the NDP coalition are doing exactly what Labour is promising to do in this election, and they try and make it about these handouts, like, oh, we're giving people these goodies, and so they vote for us. And that sounds plausible to people because people vote for things like that sometimes, but they shouldn't. And so it's very interesting that Charlotte highlights what a sensible government would do, and what a sensible government would do is, instead of taking money and spending it on targeted goods and services to buy votes, they would take the money and create an all-round tax cut. Everybody gets a tax cut. Everything's more affordable. You get more money in your pocket. And that helps everybody rather than the targeted people who they're trying to buy the votes from. And that doesn't buy votes very well. I mean, maybe it does, right? But it's not something you can advertise on very well, I guess. But they don't do it, and they're not interested in doing that because they want to be able to intake all that money and then redistribute it amongst their preferred voter bloc, right? And that's how they look at, political parties look at groups of people as blocks to build their political success with. And so they'll have, the over 70s, the over 60s, these groups of people, and they'll do something to appeal to that block of people, and then use that to say, this policy's convincing this many people of this block to vote for us, and if we can increase that by this percentage, then we're going to have a real good chance at taking that block, and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of crazy ways to break down people. But they're not looking at the best interest of the country as a whole. They're looking at ways to buy votes and to appeal to certain blocks. And sometimes that means, robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? Taking from the 30-year-olds to pay the 60-year-olds because the 60-year-olds are looking pretty soft, and we need to shore up that group of people in order to make sure our electoral victory will be complete, right? And it all sounds very justified. It all sounds very plausible, but it's playing politics. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to canadapoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.